What's up, Internet, and welcome to the first entry in my Niagara Program tutorial series. In this part, I'm going to go over the basics of the Niagara Program Object, and we'll go over how to create a very simple beginner program. So here we go. All right, so the first thing we got to do is we got to find it. So if you open up your palette, you can type in program, and you'll find this object here. You just drag it out to your wire sheet, and you're ready to look at it. All right, so here's the UI for your program object. You've got a few tabs here we'll go over in a minute. You've got a couple of icons up here in the toolbar. So you've got to compile, and you've got compile and save. And either one of these will automatically pull up your console down here. You can toggle your console with F3 and F4. So F4 to close, F3 to open. So back to these guys. So your compile and save saves your code and compiles it. And compile just compiles it. So if you're writing some code and your station crashes and you didn't hit save and compile, you're going to lose it. All right, so next up is these four tabs here. So the first one is your code editor, obviously. This is where you write all your code. Next one is the slot sheet. So this is no different than any slot sheet in any object in Niagara. You can add slots or config flags, and etc. The next one's the imports. So if you write a piece of code that relies on some object outside of these predefined modules here, this is where you declare those imports. And the last one is your source, which is basically just the raw form of your code. I use it a lot for troubleshooting issues in runtime. All right, so back to the code editor. You've got these three default methods that come with this object. The first one is on start. So anytime a station starts, this on start method is going to get called, and any code in here is going to run. And pretty much the same can be said for the on stop. So anytime station stops, this block of code is going to run. On execute's a little bit different. If you notice here in actions, you've got an execute action. So that's how this one fires off. So anytime that execute gets fired, this line of code is going to run. Typically, everything I do, it's all based off of user action, or, I mean, you can link a schedule or a trigger into these blocks. Or, I mean, you could add more actions if you want, if you need. If you had a set point or something like that, you could have a separate one for that. So we're going to start out with just a single on execute method. All right, so we're just going to do a very simple program here. I'm going to take two inputs, and we'll just add them or multiply them together, and then we'll show the output a couple different ways. So to start out with, I'm going to add a couple of slots here. So we'll call the first one, just call it NA, and the type, we'll make it let's do a status numeric. And on our flags, we want to do execute on change and summary. So execute on change means that anytime that value changes, it's going to fire this execute method. And summary is just the flag that allows this slot to be shown on the object in like the wire sheet or on the program or the property sheet. All right, so we'll add another one. We'll just call it NB, and we'll do the same thing here. And then we'll add a third one. We'll just call this an out. And we're only going to do the summary here because it's an output. So the inputs will drive the execute method to run. So the output's just the output. All right. All right, so before we start writing any code, I'm going to show you how to determine what we're going to write. So we know we've got two slots here that we're going to take and add them or multiply them together, and then send the output of that to the out slot. So if we go to over here to our source tab, in Java we got what you call getters and setters. A getter will get a property, and a setter will set a value to a property. So when I created these slots, this program object automatically created setters and getters for everything. So you'll see here we've got a get NA. So that's going to get the NA property of this object. So in theory here I can go get NA, and that'll get that property for me. But once it gets the property, that's not, I mean, just getting the property is not really going to do us a whole lot. We need to get the value of that property. So if we go back to our slot sheet, obviously these are the point, or the object type is a status numeric. So we need to find out what we can do with a status numeric to get a value from it. So it's from the Baja package or the Baja module, and this is the type of object. So if we go to help, just an FYI, pretty much anything in Niagara is appended with a B. So the type name is appended by a B. So in this case, it'll be B status numeric. So we'll go through here and look for a B status numeric, and here it is. So this is the Baja Doc for a B status numeric. So this tells you how to create one. These are your constructors. And then these are the methods. These are methods that you can call on this object type. So in this case, we want to get the value of this object. And right here, we've got a get value method. Get the value property. That's what we want to do. And this double here, this means this is the value that it's going to return. So this is the type of value it's going to return. All right, so if we go back into our code editor here, so we'll use a dot operator to chain a get value call. So now, oops, and capitalization is very key in this. So this will go from compiling just by lowercase v right there. It'll throw up an error. So switch that back. So now we successfully called a get value on this get NA property. We can store that in a variable. So since this is returning a double type, we can create a double variable. So let's call it value variable 1. And actually we can copy this. We can duplicate it and change this to 2. Change this to B. So now we've got values for both of our inputs, our input slots. So on our set, we want to set this to the out. So we can call get out. And once again, we'll go back to our Baja Doc here for the B status numeric. And we see there is a set value. It's a set value, and this means it's looking for a double. All right. So now we can call set value. And in these parentheses right here is where we're going to be putting our value. So, I mean, you could set a static value if you wanted to, as long as it's in a double. I mean, if you were right, 5, that's going to create an error here because 5 is a string. Or if you did like that, 5 is a numeric value, so that actually compiles. But in this case, we're going to add our two variables together. So we can go variable 1 plus variable 2 and compile that. And if we go to our wire sheet here, we'll drag out a couple writable points here we can play with. And we'll set one to 5, and we'll set the other one to 4. We link these guys in. You'll see that the output's 9, so they're adding. And every time one of these values updates, it fires off our onExecute method, because that's what this flag was designed to do. All right, so yep, we got our math working here. All right, another thing that's very useful, I use all the time, is Java has a built-in printer, and it prints through the console. All right, so the console, this is your compiler console, but we've also got our application director, which is a console. So we clear that. All right, so we can use Java's system.out.println. ln stands for line. And you can pass a value in here if you want to. Like you could do a string, so you could just say hello world. and you fire this out, and you see we got a console log here. All right, but also you could pass values in here too, so we could do something like we'll do some concatenation. So we'll do a string, say the value of variable 1 and variable 2 is equal to, we'll do a space, and we'll do plus, and we can just use this statement right here. Pile that and run this again, and you can see our statements printed out right there. And that's very useful. I use it a lot for, say if I've got a variable in a piece of code and it's causing an error, or it's returning some value that I'm not expecting it to. You could stick one of these print line statements right in your code, and as it's running in runtime, it'll print out the variable or whatever you're trying to figure out. It's really useful for catching bugs and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it on this first iteration. This is a very simple program, but I just wanted to teach you the ropes of how this program object works. I'm going to get into way more complex stuff later on in some other, but feel free to comment down in the comment section about anything else you'd like to learn. I mean, if there's something I'm not going to cover or something you're really interested in that I may or may not cover, just drop it down there and I'll try to get to it. So we'll see you on the next one.